Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2 Point Conversion Monday night pregame show on the Going for Two live network. Here we are on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter. Although if you're on Twitter, we can't see your comments. If you do want to interact with us, we do encourage you to head over to the Going for Two Live YouTube page. So search up Going for Two Live on YouTube. Should find us there. All sorts of great shows happening every night, including this Monday night show with the full band back together. All the Beatles again. I guess Dan's Ringo because he got the drum kit, obviously. You got to add Ringo to that name of Jet Lag John, Thomas the Tank Engine, B-League says Dan. How you doing?
Ringo Rosia, how you going?
I like that.
I'm good, my friends.
Does that make me Yoko?
Good Lord. No.
I mean, you could be John Lennon if you wanted more credit, but sure, I mean, Yoko's a singer too.
Which one's alive?
I guess Ringo is, so you're looking good.
I'll take it. I've got the drum kit, somewhere.
There you go.
I want to be George Harrison, so I claim that. Just lead guitarist, of course, and some of my favorite Beatles songs are George. But we're here to talk football, aren't we? And yeah, not Steelers like last week, but still big Steelers fan. Gladys here. I guess you're Paul McCartney. I don't know if that makes you feel better. You'd rather be John Lennon, but how you doing?
Paul McCartney sucks.
Okay, so you can be John Lennon then. There you go, Doc. You're Paul McCartney.
Today
I guess it's an insult.
Oh my God.
That was an insult. He's a dick.
Okay.
I don't want to be Paul McCartney.
We are an audience. We are in for a treat. So buckle your seatbelts, folks. If you tuned into the show and this is your first time tuning in, get ready to watch the best show that we've ever had.
That's going to be the first time. I've never heard that before.
Really?
Fuck you, Paul.
Really?
Damn, Gladys.
This is right out of the gate.
So it's funny, guys. Think back to Pulp Fiction, right?
So the Beatles are a sermon. So the Beatles are a sore point for Gladys.
Well, I like the Beatles. I just don't like Paul McCartney.
Yeah, so if you want to be George Harrison, I don't mind being Paul McCartney. I like the bass player too. Lead guitarist, bass player. That's mostly my favorite members of every band. But yeah, well, anyway, so yeah, Gator J's in the chats again. If anyone wants to join and interact with us, feel free. We'll talk eventually about Monday Night Football, but of course we've got the doc, the fantasy sports doc, Dr. X. But now I know how to say it properly. Dr. James Ferretti, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It's good to be back with the gang. Even if Gladys is as salty as I've ever seen her. I'm here for it, honestly. And yeah, it's good to see everybody. Good to be back.
Should we get right into injury talk, or does Dan want to rant first? I don't know how you feel about the Giants.
It's only an hour-long show. Do we have enough time for a Dan rant right off the bat?
No, we're good.
Well,
listen, all full discretion, I barely watched much football this week. It was my son's 4th birthday. So I just covered in Spider-Man and confetti. So
nice.
Yes,
covered in Spider-Man.
How's that different? How's that different from any other weekend?
Well, I didn't have a choice this week, so.
Oh.
There we go. That's a logical argument. But yeah, what I think is, a lot of extreme things happening specifically with the Rams. And, we like to touch on like the Thursday night injuries for teams. But I mean, the Rams, you could go through the entire list of players. We would probably list the players that are healthy and it'll be quicker. But we do want to start talking about Matthew Stafford, the quarterback, and some of the extreme narratives that could be tossed around. I mean, something, I remember back issues were a thing back when he was with the Lions. Is this coming back to fruition? I know a couple weeks ago, Doc, you did mention the different types of spinal injuries and how, you hear spinal, but not all of them are as severe as others are. So what do we know about Stafford's current injury? And it looks like he's on the injured reserve out for the season. So.
Yeah, so this injury kind of went from bad to worse because initially it was a concussion, and then he had another concussion, and then it may not be a concussion, it's a neck injury, which is pretty wide encompassing. But the way they were kind of playing it out was that he had a neck strain, or he had, a stinger or something like that. And then all of a sudden they're talking about now he has a spinal cord contusion and he's on IR. So let's just talk about what that is and what that means. So a contusion to the spinal cord is a bruise to the actual nerve that runs down the back that all the other nerves come off of. That's really important for things like movement and breathing and, basic bodily function. So you see spinal cord contusions in people that get into car accidents or have severe spinal injuries, and they can result in paralysis or death in some cases. So he got pretty lucky, in this case, that it was in a place and it wasn't severe enough that he didn't have some major, major issues from this. But it ended up with him going on IR, which is not surprising. So they haven't completely ruled him out for the year, but I think that's ridiculous. Like, I would be shocked, absolutely shocked, if we saw him play again in 2022. But here's the thing that maybe you guys have been hearing about this, and was the first thing that I thought about. When players get spinal cord contusions, at least in the past, they've retired because of the risk of further damage to the spinal cord and the risk of paralysis and death and other, really horrific things. And I think there's a non-zero chance that, despite what they're saying right now, that he could just decide, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I'm done. Because a lot of other players have. Like, it's kind of the precedent. So I don't know if that's what you guys are hearing, but that's one of the things that I thought about. And that's kind of, surprising and kind of shocking in a way, because he signed this big 4-year contract a couple of years ago. They win the Super Bowl. This year was, not good, to put it extremely mildly. And the expectation is that he's going to be around for at least a few more years. And now the reality is that just might not be the case.
I got a question.
Okay.
And this sounds really, I don't know how to put this, but it doesn't sound great, because it just doesn't. But, NFL teams tell us what they want us to know.
Yep.
If they had a positive record and were in the hunt, is it possible for him to still be out there?
I'm sorry. They had a positive record of what?
If they were viable.
If they were playoff contenders, is it possible that he's still out there playing through all this, and they're just letting this go? Like, is that a possibility? And are they telling us what they may or may not want to know? Because it sounds like the last couple of weeks prior to, feels like this week is the most information we have got. For whatever reason, hows and whys, it doesn't matter. It feels like they were kind of hopeful he'd be playing anyway. And I know that says a lot, but if they were in the playoff hunt, do you think he would be pushing to be playing, or they would be letting him play? Because that, to me, sounds like we hear you come on every week say it's a car crash. And you've said today, like, being in a car crash, people get this from being in a car crash, literally being in a car crash.
Yeah.
Here he is, 10 years in, being in a car crash. But if they had a positive record, could he still be out there? Could he still be playing right now?
Yeah.
A car crash. Yeah. Here he is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, he could still be out there playing. And the thing is that I think we see this probably not infrequently with a lot of players that end up having what sound like really bad injuries, but their symptoms aren't bad. So the thing with the spinal cord is, depending on the level of where the bruise is, that's kind of what determines what your symptoms are. And the higher up, generally speaking, the injury is, the worse it is, just because that's where different functionality is. And if you have injuries that are higher up, that's where kind of the breathing center is, and then the main movement center. And if you lose everything from here down, then you kind of lose movement from your shoulders down, and that's not good. So wherever the contusion is or the bruise is, it sounds like it's not severe. Otherwise, he'd have a lot more symptoms. But it sounds like it was something that he could conceivably play through. Maybe he has some numbness or tingling or weakness or things like that. But yeah, would they run him out there, and would he push to go out there as well? I think there's a chance that he could, and then he would. So he may actually be fortunate that they looked as hard as they did, and that the Rams' record isn't that good, where it's like it's kind of more palatable to everybody to say, oh yeah, okay, shut them down, because what are you playing for? But yeah, if they were fighting for a playoff spot, I think the narrative switches, and it's like you have to sacrifice everything for the team and for the fan base and for everybody else, and put your life and your limb on the line. And yeah, I think that happens a lot. And it's kind of sobering when you think about it.
For what it's worth, I'm just checking spot right now. Just for what it's worth, cap hit 2023 is 20 mil, dead cap 49.5 mil. 2024 cap hit 49.5 mil, dead cap 36. 2025, 50.5 mil, dead cap 24. On Spot Track, they're saying the potential out is 2026 at that point, where it would be 152 mil, 12 million dead cap.
$152 million cap hit.
They can always work something out. If he retires, they can settle it in some other way. They can do some magic.
I feel like he's the next Bobby Bonilla. That's just what I think.
For those who know Rick DiPietro to go closer to the New Yorkers.
Again, like that cap hit is just.
Was Bobby Bonilla first overall pick like Rick DiPietro was? It doesn't matter.
I just don't Bobby. Listen, as a Mets person, I just bye Jacob. 2, welcome Mr. Cy Young, and 3, the most important thing is I know what Bobby Bonilla Day is. That's your rite of passage as a New Yorker.
To Met fans, look at it this way. I think this could be viewed as a net positive. I know we're talking football, but baseball, it's like, so you lose one Cy Young winner and you gain another Cy Young winner. So that's a wash. But you also gain Kate Upton. So it's not. It could be worse.
Clearly, it's in the name, right? That must
I think in some ways you can look at this as a win. So if wherever that's worth.
Uptown Kate, here we go.
Well, it's funny. So Corey Simmons joining us for the first time here.
Awesome.
Sorry that this is kind of typical. Actually, we kind of rant and go all over the place. Although I guess Gator thinks we're in for a treat. Gator does have a couple questions here though. So talking with the Stafford injuries, do Kupp and Donald injuries influence that decision? I have one thing to add to this too. Just to clarify, Doc, do we know? A few weeks ago when Stafford was put in concussion protocol without a concussion, is it because of this contusion or is this like, we really don't know? I think are we piecing that together? That's what it was. Cause they kind of said he didn't have a concussion, but was in the protocol for,
I don't even think they knew. I think he was having symptoms and it was, he was having neurological symptoms, probably some numbness, tingling, maybe there's some dizziness, pain. It's, you're in a car crash. It's like, how do you feel? Kind of crappy. So then they evaluated it some more. They probably got some imaging. They got an MRI and there's like, oh, look, there's a bruise on the spinal cord that explains stuff. So maybe he didn't have a concussion after all. Maybe these symptoms are because he's got a bruise in his spinal cord and that's what it is. Or maybe he had a little from column A and a little from column B and the concussion kind of resolved itself. And now he still has the neurological symptoms from the spinal cord, injury. So I don't think there's anything necessarily nefarious where they're being deliberately, that they're being deliberately deceptive. It's like not all of this is known prospectively. I think you can kind of put the pieces together retrospectively. So I don't think they necessarily knew about it, but now that they do know, you have the burden of that knowledge, and you're putting a player at risk if you put him out there in harm's way. And aside from the fact that you care about him as a human being, from the team standpoint, as Dan just laid out, they have a significant financial investment in him as well. And he's a team leader and he's very important to the success of the team. So there's a lot of really good reasons, both as a professional organization and as a humanitarian organization, to keep him out of harm's way and let him heal. And that's what they're doing.
And I guess they're saying like part of what Dan's saying with the bad record and now the Cup's out, and then like Aaron Donald held out this week. I think Gator's asking like, because those players are injured, it's easier to sit Stafford. Okay,
I think it's just the record. I'd be honest with you. I'm not disagreeing to be an asshole about it, but I really don't think that the other players' injuries have anything to do with it. I think it's the fact that the team record sucks and they're not going to make the playoffs. That has a lot more to do with it. I think if the other guys were injured, if they weren't injured and the team was doing better and they were 8-5 or whatever, that's a whole different kettle of fish. Then it becomes a different story, like we talked about. The other guys being hurt, it's like guys get hurt. It's like it is what it is, But the whole team is doing poorly and they're not going anywhere this year, so there's no reason to kind of force the issue.
The
Rams here. Anyway, sorry for teams.
The Rams are so bad that they brought Cam Akers back to bring him into relevancy. That's how bad the Rams is. Yeah. The Rams are so bad they thought they'd give Cam Akers another shot.
That is the ultimate Russian roulette backfield if I've ever seen one. I mean, if you've been relying on Rams running backs this year, like you have to have pulled all your hair out by now.
Quick, rush out to get Kyron Williams. Go get him.
Yeah, exactly.
Nah.
Oh, the question: what teams do we all support? So, I'm a Packers fan. Gladys supports the Steelers.
I just hope everyone's having a good time.
Yeah.
Dan, you don't root for the best and also worst ever 7-4-1 team in NFL history, the Giants?
You've never seen one like them.
No, that's true. And then Doc's a Raiders fan.
The Las Vegas Raiders.
Hey, good win there. That's twice in big games they've beaten the Chargers. In this calendar, actually, because that happened in January. Any thoughts on the likelihood of Ken Walker playing? What's your opinion on the severity of his injury? So, Doc, was there anything else you want to say about Stafford? Or
No, I think we definitely hit it. But Corey, I'm glad you asked. So this is going to be illustrated for lots of good reasons. So the first lesson is we got a little taste of some good old Pete Carroll medicalese. We got a heavy dose of that because there's a lot of Seattle injuries, and it's one of my favorite things is being an injury analyst is getting to read the tea leaves of what Pete Carroll's talking about. So Ken Walker's injury, as reported by Pete Carroll, was he jammed his ankle. So what it turns out actually happened was he has an injury to the inside ligaments of his ankle. And that's a little bit atypical because most of the time when you have a sprained ankle, it's the ligaments on the outside. They're not as strong, and just the ankle tends to bend in easier than it bends out. And when it bends in too far, then you injure the ligaments on the outside. What Ken Walker actually did was he bent it too far outward, and he injured the ligaments on the inside of the ankle. So again, that's more rare. The good news with that is that because those ligaments are stronger, there's less concern for instability or re-injury. And as long as he doesn't have an associated injury like a bone bruise, or, some other structures are injured, I think he has a real chance to play this week. Although, again, I do caution you, and this is something, if you take nothing else away from this show, other than Gladys is amazing when she's super salty, I caution you that when it comes to Pete Carroll, trust nothing he says and always err on the side of caution. So I'm cautiously optimistic that Ken Walker is going to be able to play this week, despite, jamming his ankle. But I really still, feel this sense of caution to have a backup in play because you never know with Seattle, especially.
So the Monday night hit list so far: Paul McCartney, Pete Carroll. That's
Hey, we love Pete Carroll on this show. He gives us lots of fun material to talk about, and we're not done talking about Pete Carroll either.
Maybe you'd be amazed to see him do something silly. Who knows?
Exactly.
You come up with some logic.
So, speaking of backups, I guess DJ Dallas would be the Seattle Seahawks backup to have. Travis Homer is also there, so I don't know. Maybe if without Walker, it's just more of a 50-50 split committee. But if it seems like if you're going to pick up one or the other, it's Dallas.
Well,
I thought Dallas was hurt.
Yeah.
Sick. Yeah.
So let's get to that. So per Pete Carroll, DJ Dallas is dealing with, and this is a direct quote, he's dealing with, quote, somewhat of a high ankle issue, close quote, which is just that's the best description of an injury I've heard all year.
Maybe
Tony Jones time.
That is fantastic. So that's like saying that somebody gets shot in the chest and calling it somewhat of a gunshot issue. I mean,
it's just a flesh wound.
It's perfect. So the reality is, you guys tell me what you think. Something that's somewhat of a high ankle issue sounds like code for it's a high ankle sprain, which is definitely not great.
I think I want to sit at a poker table with Pete Carroll.
Guy's a wild card.
Play a while. Wait, that's not even a card in the deck.
Yeah, exactly. So with DJ Dallas,
Pete, we're playing poker, not blackjack. Put it on.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'm thinking like Crazy Eights. It's wild card. You can change suit.
With DJ Dallas, we know the deal here. If it's a high ankle sprain, 4 to 5 weeks, he's probably out until the playoffs. So then we roll into Travis Homer, except Travis Homer missed week 13 with an illness, and now, according to Pete Carroll, he has a knee injury as well. So big shoulder shrug here. All I could say as far as Travis Homer's concerned is watch the practice reports and see if he, is able to practice and looks like he's going to be able to play, because all these guys are really up in the air. And the bottom line is Tony Jones could actually end up getting the start here if it all goes sideways, and he's the only really healthy one. So if I had to rank them in order, I would say Ken Walker, Tony Jones, Travis Homer, DJ Dallas.
Do they claim Melvin Gordon off of the Chiefs practice squad? I mean, I guess it's not an AFC West team because everyone wants him to go to your Raiders, so he plays for every team in the division. But
yeah, nice.
Yeah. Okay. So Ken Walker. Yeah. So we don't really know who to pick up for Seattle. So if you have Ken Walker, rather than say Tony Jones, might it even be better just to look at other teams' backups? Who are the other running backs that should be getting touches on other teams, as opposed to trying to dissect who's going to be the backup on Seattle? That might be more fruitful.
Yeah, I mean, it might be. It really depends on your league context and what you have available. But again, like what I said, is of all those guys, I rank Tony Jones second. So it's like if I was going to take a dart throw on somebody, he might be my guy, because these other guys sound like they could be really hurt and not play. And if Ken Walker, is either limited or has a setback, like Tony Jones is actually decent when he filled in, with the Saints. So it's like he can play. And Seattle's been kind of good this year. So he's exactly the kind of like running back who comes in for a week, like Justin Jackson last year, fresh legs, and drops a 30 burger on somebody to get you over the hump to get you in the playoffs. So stranger things have happened. So that's all I'm saying.
Well, Gator's going to ask about tonight's game in terms of injuries. Really, it was just Leonard Fournette, I think, in terms of he's questionable, but it looks like he's active.
Fournette and Gage were the ones that
Marshawn Gage is Lattimore is out.
He's out?
Oh, who's out?
Marshawn Lattimore is out. Pete Werner is out. So that's
Pete Werner as a linebacker, that might help Fournette. So Fournette's playable. Oh, and Gage is active as well. Does anyone trust Russell Gage though?
No.
No.
The only time you're playing Russell Gage is if you've already won and you decide to throw him in your flex for shits and gigs.
Hope he doesn't fumble.
That's it. There's no need to.
Yeah, maybe as like a really cheap showdown option. Like that's the only thing I could think is like you needed to fill out a lineup. You want to take a shot on somebody.
Yeah, like,
and
I'm the biggest Russell Gage.
I've got a scenario, and this is something I kind of prepared for. Thinking that Fournette might miss, having Rachaad White in flex spots, a bunch of spots, and now that we know Fournette's active, I know in a couple of those leagues I had Julio Jones on the bench, so I've just gone and done that and just put Julio Jones in those flex spots over Rachaad White. Maybe someone's in a similar situation with Russell Gage, and rather than play the backup running back, they'd rather get the fourth wide receiver. Does that make sense? Like, I think we'd still rather play White over Gage, but it's hard. Do you guys think I'm making a mistake putting Julio Jones over Rachaad White?
Carl, I think it's hard to put it's hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube with Rachaad White at this point. He's their guy. I get Fournette's there, but I think they've had such a cluster muck of bad running backs after Fournette, whether it was Gio Bernard, Keyshawn Vaughn, Ronald Jones. They have a guy that they go, okay, he's actually helping. So I don't think they could go back in terms of running back work to Fournette right now. They'll still use him, but I don't think they can go completely back to this guy being the dominant guy that he was a year ago. So
you're thinking 50-50 split between the two?
Why not? I mean,
I think it's going to be
Fournette
like
is the pass catcher.
But just in a hypothetical, if Fournette gets more work, I think Rachaad White's shown enough efficiency now to be able to do more with less. So he's fine if he's getting more work or less work. He's going to be doing something. In terms of Julio, I think we've seen enough of Julio versus at New Orleans to know that he absolutely destroys them. So we know that he's good on the Saints. We know that he is that guy. But I don't know. You're throwing another pass catcher in front of him, around him, and it's not like he's lighting it up with 15 targets a game like he might have in Atlanta. This is a different Julio Jones with how he gets used. So there you go. White was 9 for 9. Like, okay, that might not happen tonight, but we know he's going to get worked. He's going to get worked in a lot more than what Julio will. He's going to get more opportunity. And that's what we're at. Like, if you're chasing a game, you want opportunity.
And play White in one, Julio in the other.
Yeah, it's your league, man. Do what you want.
All right.
Gladys, you were gonna say something. What were you gonna say about Rashad White?
I actually really don't remember. I'm sorry.
Well, we're sorry we ranted too much.
That's
Make,
okay.
make sure you tag Gladys in Discord. She'll answer all your
Please
questions.
do. Please do.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dan. Go to the discord.com/going4two for the Going for Two Discord server, which has tons of great channels. I think we're at over 750 subscribers, so tons of great chats happening, tons of great communication, all sorts of different channels designated for very specific things. So it's all really well set up, and there's tons of activity there. So check out the Discord, Going for Two. Well, I guess, yeah. So more questions. Rashad White or Chris Godwin?
Godwin.
Okay, so we're saying, White is a 50-50 running back. We like him certainly more than Russell Gage, more than any of the tight ends. Julio, like the wide receiver 3 on the team, is maybe where it's in line with. But then when we get to the starting 2 wide receivers, Godwin or Mike Evans, we're definitely going with those 2 over Rashad White.
Godwin's been on a bit of a roll the last few weeks.
Yeah,
as well, right?
Yeah.
I don't
Seems
wanna,
like he's Doc fully recovered from the ACL tear. Like now we're like 12 months removed. So early in the season, maybe it was expected that he wouldn't do so well and doing better of late.
So,
Hey, Doc, do we know why Jameis Winston isn't playing? Does he have like a bad back or something, or do they just want to go with Andy Dalton because I don't know, he's Andy Dalton and he's a good game manager, even though he can't get the ball to fucking Chris Olave. But
Yeah, he had a back injury a few, like months ago. He broke some transverse process fractures in his spine, so they're like kind of bones off to the sides of the spine, and he broke them, and he missed a week, and he kind of got Wally pipped, to use another baseball analogy. And it's Andy Dalton's job now. Like, he's healthy as far as I know, and Andy Dalton is the starter for whatever reason. They like him better.
Godwin.
I wonder if Dalton just looks better in practice. Like he seems more like mature leader. Like the guys in the locker room maybe respond to that better. So even though Winston he's got the talent, I still wonder if there's a lack of maturity there in the like maybe Dennis Allen, the way he runs it, doesn't like that. If this was Sean Payton, he could see the upside. Like I can make this guy amazing kind of thing. Like I wonder if Sean Payton was there, he would maybe keep having Winston as the starter, but maybe Dennis Allen was just kind of looking for any excuse to have, bench Winston. I don't know. I'm just pulling at straws.
Yeah. I don't know. I couldn't think that. I think any of those things you could speculate on lots of things.
So Defes Solo is mentioning like that Rashad White, Chris Godwin decision down 15 points. Does that change anything?
So for what it's worth, and I just checked the last month, and obviously Godwin's played also from week 8 to week 12. Godwin is the wide receiver 11 on a points per game basis at 18.1. Now that'll work. That's very generic because I'm just checking Fantasy Pros at this point. Obviously, everyone else's league settings are different. But he's also played one less game than a few goals, and Mecole Hardman popped up in there for one game too. So take that for what you want, but it feels like over the last month, he's back. I think it's fair to say. So, and you can see that because Mike Evans, he's been a little lackluster. There's been no tight end of consequence like Gronk taking that work. The running backs haven't done much. Like White's looked good the last 2 weeks, but really it feels it's been Chris Godwin leading the way, going from there, and that's just my opinion. I'd feel safer tonight with Godwin than, and that takes nothing away from the Saints. Their secondary generally across the board is pretty good, but no Lattimore.
If Fournette was inactive, I think this would be closer.
I'd feel a little bit off about that.
I think Godwin is the better chance at the better floor, but also the better ceiling to like smash way above. Does anyone disagree? Like, does anyone think would any of you play Rashad White over Chris Godwin?
No.
What happened?
Are you okay, Dan?
Dan's having technical difficulties.
We can hear you, by the way, so you're good.
Yeah.
Dennis Allen is having maybe issues. Gator points out that they don't have their first round pick.
Listen,
I also add Jameis Winston's never been to the playoffs, so I don't know that it would be that much better.
Let me say something as well. For what it's worth, and I've got this written down a little bit lower. The Saints are only one game off Tampa. They're only one win off being at the top of the South with
win
a game
tonight,
in
it
hand.
changes the bunch.
Because the Bucks have a bye next week, right? So I think maybe the
No,
Saints,
they've already had their
No,
bye.
they had their bye.
Oh, so the Saints have the bye next week. One of the two.
Yeah.
So like they could literally go into next week on top of the South. Like they're not as far away. Like it's okay to say he traded away their first, and they're a bottom 5 pick, which Philly gets, give or take, right? But they're also 2 or 3 wins away from being a mid first round pick and a playoff contender. It's a very weird dynamic the Saints and that whole South has at this point. I don't think Atlanta's going to stick about.
That whole division is just
like,
insane.
What's Cleveland do? What Cleveland? I meant Carolina doing because of Baker Mayfield.
Well, for what it is, I mean, I think this has to be a bigger game than what we're. Look, it sucks. They're both struggling, but this has to be a bigger game with implications for playoffs.
Yeah, it's playoff. This is serious
is like-
playoff
this is
implications.
literally-
One of these two teams probably going to win the division and go to the playoffs.
This is what 3 or 4 weeks after the bye week for the Saints, right? And that's 3 or 4. Like it's not like the Bucks are lighting it up.
No.
They drew with what? Cleveland, right? They're not over the. Oh, they lost to Cleveland. So they lost to Cleveland.
Not everyone ties in overtime, Dan.
Hey, listen. It feels like a very Tennessee thing to do. So whatever, we did it. We can cross that one off the list for the year. The Giants. We got a draw.
Right? Yeah, it's the Giants experience. It's the bingo card full.
Listen. You want to play an extra 15 minutes? Everyone got 15 minutes extra worth of value, I guess. But whatever. That's what I'm just saying though. Like, this game feels like it should be bigger than what it is. And if they feel like Andy Dalton's the guy that's going to get them there, that's I don't know. I'd feel. Maybe I'm in World Cup soccer playoff mode where everything's do or die, but like I'd be going for the guy that can throw it for 500 yards a game. That's just me. Why not? What's the worst thing that happens? You end up where you are already, the bottom of the South? Is that the end of the world?
I think they might be taking a little bit of a page out of like the Trent Dilfer Ravens of the early 2000s, where it's like he led them to a Super Bowl and all he had to do was just not get in the way of the defense. And New Orleans has had a really good defense, and they don't necessarily need somebody to go out there and score tons of points. They just need somebody to go out there and not kind of, screw it all up, which Andy Dalton has done to varying degrees of success. So it's not like he's, perfect at it, but he's definitely has at times been able to manage the game better than Jameis Winston has, at least historically speaking. So I think that's the thought process. And because they're so close, it's kind of like, well, it's been kind of working so far, so let's see if we can continue with it. So I don't know. Those are kind of my thoughts. And
I think we're going to get to the game tonight a little bit later, but we talk about our props and who we're choosing. But yeah, let's get back to some injury talk. Quarterback Lamar Jackson. Corey asked you how concerned he should be about his knee.
All right, well, that's a good question. Corey's got all the good questions today, so you gotta come back, Corey, because you're a rock star. So they're reporting his knee injury as a mild sprain. So it sounds like he's got an injury to the ligaments, and it occurred on a tackle. So there could be more to it. Like there could be a bone bruise associated with it. There could be something else there. So the good news is it's not season ending, and they already said that. He's almost assuredly going to be out this week, and he's been labeled as week to week by Coach Harbaugh, which is rarely good. So I think 2 to 3 weeks here is a conservative estimate. It could be longer. The thing is, Tyler Huntley is the backup, and he's not Lamar Jackson, but he can run, and he flashed in a few games as Lamar's stand-in last year, so don't overlook him. And he actually had a really efficient game against a pretty good defense where he kind of got thrown into the fire. 27 completions out of 32 for 187 yards and 10 rushes for 41 yards and a rushing touchdown. So that's not, Jalen Hurts, but that's not nothing either. And that might be enough if you're really, your quarterback's hurt or, you pick him up off the scrap heap. He can get you some points. And he did the same thing last year. Like he was pretty decent as a fill-in until he got COVID. And then and then Tyler Huntley was out, and I forget who the third stringer was, but then it all kind of fell apart. But that's where we are with Lamar. So, I think kind of 2 to 3 weeks is a conservative estimate, and they really have an eye to getting him back towards the end of the year. And depending on what they look like record-wise, focusing on the playoffs with him. So that's kind of the situation.
So would Tyler Huntley be someone, say if Corey, I don't know if you have fab budget bidding in your league, but would that be someone in theory that you would just empty whatever your budget's left, you're maxing out, emptying the pocketbook to try and get him as insurance for Lamar Jackson? Or do you think you can patch the quarterback position with a less serious investment, let's say.
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily have to empty the clip, as they say. But you know me, and this is the time of year when it starts getting cold out and we start getting towards the playoffs where it's like you're not shooting for upside anymore. You want healthy bodies, so you want insurance. So I definitely think it's worth something to go out and get players, get the backups for the players that are on your team, because you don't want to get left with empty pockets where you're scrambling to find somebody on waivers who's going to be starting for you, and you don't know what you're going to get with that, or if you even get them. So the worst thing that you can have is going into a must-win game or a playoff game with kind of like an empty roster spot where you're throwing a backup in or you're throwing a fourth wide receiver in because you don't have any other better options. So even though a player may not be of the highest skill set, if he's going to get the opportunity to play and he's going to get the reps, then I think he has value just on the basis of the insurance alone. I know this is something that we don't all agree on, but this is definitely what I gear towards, because injuries happen, and an injury at this point can derail an entire season. You can have a 12-1 team and you lose a couple of key players just for a couple of weeks. And because you lost them at the wrong time, you lose them in week 2 and 3, nobody cares. Doesn't matter. But because you lose them at the end of the year, that can knock you out of the playoffs, and that can undo all of the good work and the hard work that you put in this year. So you want to try to avoid that as much as possible.
So for comparison of Tyler Huntley, how about Brock Purdy, who now looks like he'll be the starting quarterback for the 49ers unless Baker Mayfield gets signed there because Jimmy Garoppolo's injury?
Yeah. So Jimmy, I don't know a whole lot about Brock Purdy. I know he looked pretty decent. I'm going to, kick that over to you guys if you know anything else about him. I know he was Mr. Irrelevant because he was the last pick in the draft. I learned that last night, so that's fun. But Jimmy Garoppolo, basically short story, broken foot. He's done for the year. Like, that's it. So the 49ers, they win on defense. So it's kind of the same thing. I think he could be successful.
What are the chances that Trey Lance comes back?
I don't know if it's 0. I think, depending, we may hear more about that. They haven't mentioned anything specific about that now, but I think there's a non-zero chance that he could actually be back for the playoffs.
Wow. That would be the first I've heard anyone kind of reference that. Dan has thoughts.
This is like, remember how Shanahan was at Washington when they rushed back to RG3, right?
Oh, that was,
because it was a chance.
It was his dad.
Yeah, no, but Kyle was on that staff, though. I think Dan's right.
Okay. Yeah. Just imagine, could they ruin 2 quarterbacks again? Could they do it? The Shanahans, could they? Look, I think if he's healthy, if Trey Lance happens to come back healthy and get a playoff run, say San Fran can win. Look, that wild card slot for the NFC is wild open to the point where the Packers are a chance now, right? This is real. Like, Detroit are only 2 wins off the Giants. That's it's wide open to the point where it's out there. So San Fran, what are they, like 8 wins?
I think
and
so.
And they're on top of their division, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're 2 wins away from probably being a wild card spot, which gets them into January at this point. So if they can get to January, and what they said, it was a 12 to 13 week, 14 week recovery for Trey Lance.
It'd be pretty close to that, yeah.
I hope they're not. I hope that they're not dumb enough to put him in. I hope. I really do. But we were talking about Stafford before, and if they were in playoff contention, he'd probably still be playing, right? So NFL teams are a funny beast, and I'm not going to pretend to know what they're thinking. I just let the kid, just let it go. It's
so
fun.
so I guess we're not so confident that Purdy starts the entire season, right?
They did pick up Josh Johnson, which, he has his moments in the NFL. He's 13 years, 87 teams. He plays 1 game a year, and he does all right for that 1 game. He can't get a gig, but he's good for one. He's good for one. Is
that who was on the Ravens last year that replaced?
Yeah.
All right.
And I think he also played for the Jets last year too. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure he did.
Ooh, I think you're right about that. Yeah, I think he was.
He played for a few teams last year, so he actually won me a playoff game last year. Him and Nick Foles, go figure.
Now you know what the Eagles feel like having Nick Foles win playoff games for you. But yeah, so assuming that both Purdy and Tyler Huntley are available for Corey, would you go with them or would you go with the already established starters? So he's listing Kenny Pickett, Jared Goff, Marcus Mariota, Russell Wilson. I would say throw in Huntley, throw in Purdy there as well. Who should be the player that Corey prioritizes to pick up?
Pickett.
Gladys.
Goff, at least for next week. He's playing at home against Minnesota. Goff is pretty spectacular at home compared to what he is on the road.
And if you get to the championship game, his week 17 fans championship game is at home. So if for whatever reason you need him there and Lamar Jackson's not back, that's also kind of an advantage there. Goff was going to be the guy I said too. So.
Averages 257 yards a game at home compared to 220 on the road.
Yeah, I would go Goff.
I would go Goff, and a shout out to Hamid Sandhu if you're watching.
That's
the biggest Goff hater ever. But yeah, Goff number one. I think going further down the list, if Goff gets taken, I would consider Huntley just because of the running ability as number two. And then Mariota Pickett, the
problem with Mariota is the bye week coming up. So
I think
you need a quarterback this week. Mariota's almost the last one because you won't have him this week.
There you go.
So I think
there's a chance Mariota gets replaced by Desmond Ridder too.
So
yeah, there is that.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty easily Goff. Hope you get Goff, and if you don't, probably doesn't make a difference who you get, whether it's Wilson, Pickett, Huntley. To Doc's point, Huntley might be the guy that's Huntley. Best after Goff.
Huntley is the guy.
Do what you can to get Goff. I think he should be solid.
To piggyback off what Gladys said, I think I'd be looking at guys who are playoff contenders. Huntley's probably good for 1 week. So if you want to play him for 1 week, have at it. But if you're looking for a multiple week thing, Mariota and the Falcons, they're in playoff contention. He's probably playing to the end of the year for me.
Yeah, but you're missing something with Huntley because he already has Lamar. So if Huntley's not playing,
but that's what I'm saying. No, that's what I'm saying. For 1 week, Huntley would be an easy spot stream for me. But of the other guys,
it might be.
We don't know that Lamar is going to just miss 1 week, right?
Yeah, we don't know that. He could miss 3 weeks.
Okay,
but Goff has.
In terms of
zero chance of getting benched. Imagine the same for Pickett.
Pickett's the same. So I'd look at that as long as it's
Russell's been playing so awful at this point. What would they need? How bad can he play for him to bench him? Right, so that was not happening.
I say it again, and we laugh at it, but the Lions have the same amount of wins as the Falcons. So in terms of those wild card spots, they're a chance if they keep winning through, they win a few more games. Goff at least, and we said it before. You hit week 16, 17, he has 1 or 2 friendly matchups in those playoffs. Again, if you're looking for 1 week, I think Huntley's the guy. But after that, you can stream those guys week after week for the best matchup, and you'll be right.
So if you're willing to spend, again, if it's fab bidding, spend up on Goff, and if you don't get him, Huntley for cheap makes sense too. And then
if it's just 1 week,
Baker could get signed by the 49ers, or is that just
he's done?
It doesn't matter.
Why would you
not people might go into that pool again?
In theory,
exactly.
What's Baker's best skill set? Right, it's his quick, accurate throwing.
TV
in the short game, right? That's 49ers' entire system, right? So for a system that'd be made for Baker, this makes a lot of sense. But then I guess it's a reunion with him and Christian McCaffrey, and I guess that didn't go so well in Carolina, right? All right, so we're not talking about Baker Mayfield anymore. Let's talk about quarterbacks.
Not getting sucked into that again.
Tua. Let's talk about Tua.
If the Carolina Panthers would prefer Sam Darnold over you, you're done. It's finished. Let him go.
Fair enough. I wonder if Zach Wilson ends up on the Panthers. But anyway, Tua Tagovailoa, leg injury.
Okay.
Skylar Thompson came in late, but
yeah. So quickly, allegedly he could have returned. He had an ankle injury. Allegedly could have returned to the Week 13 game. So tentatively expected to play in Week 14. But we've heard this before. So watch your practice reports and make sure you have somebody else lined up just in case. We ran through a bunch of quarterbacks we just talked about. And for what it's worth, talking about backups, Teddy Bridgewater has been out since week 6 with a knee injury, and Skylar Thompson came in relief of Tua and threw 1 pass in week 13 for an interception. So that's not great. So I definitely think you want to look elsewhere if he ends up not playing. But that's kind of the story with Tua. I'm pretty optimistic that he's going to, barring some kind of setback or they're not telling us, what is actually going on there. They're lying about the fact that he could have come back in. Or they find something worse.
I'm
I think
almost
he's
more
gonna
concerned
make
about
it.
his teammate Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, I am actually. So with Waddle, he had a leg injury, and they said he was kind of he's injured, he's kind of limping around, and he didn't look the same after he kind of came back into the game. So the details are still unclear. It's really gonna be interesting to see if he goes for imaging or if he's even able to practice, and what we can infer from that to see like how bad this is. It could just be something where he just has a soft tissue bruise and he was in some pain in a couple of days. He'll be fine. So it could be nothing, but it could also be something. And we're not going to know until we either see him practice or some more reports come out that he went for some imaging because he was still hurting and what that shows. For what it's worth, Trent Sherfield and Cedric Wilson could see more usage if he misses time. And they flashed in the past for the people that are relatively desperate at wide receiver. And it gets kind of desperate at this time of year. It's like win or get in, win or go home scenarios, or, injuries happen and, benches get thin. And, these are the kind of guys that sometimes they step up and they just have that 1 week that puts you over. So, that
Sherfield's
that
probably the
happen.
guy you're going to have to put a waiver claim in for, especially he got the long touchdown. But frankly, he's been playing more snaps all season as the clear number 3. But Cedric Wilson, to your credit, Doc, he's someone that probably clears waivers, and later in the week you could pick up for free if you can't get Sherfield. And maybe if you want to wait, you don't want to invest in Sherfield, and you're waiting it out with Waddle, and then later in the week you find out Wilson might be available there. So that's a good point.
I did want to touch on. I did want to touch on something really quick, and then we can kind of rapid fire and get to the game. Yeah. So Joe Mixon with his concussion, concussion gate continues, but he's still in the protocol now, and he missed week 12 and week 13. So the thing that was interesting, I want to talk about it a little bit, was Coach Taylor called his absence precautionary, suggesting that he was in close, and we can infer from that he'll be available for week 14. But here's the thing. I went back and did the work for all you guys, because this is the work that I want to do to help the audience so you guys don't have to do this. I went back and actually got a copy of the NFL concussion protocol, the whole thing. It's like a 15-page document. And I read the whole thing this morning because I wanted to make sure that I was not, making assumptions, that I was speaking accurately about what the protocol is. And I've read it before. I wanted to make sure they didn't make any changes, and they didn't. So here's the thing. The last step of the protocol is you need to practice in full without return or worsening of symptoms, or you have to do, if the team doesn't practice, you have to do something that simulates a full contact practice, and then be cleared by the team physician and an independent neurologist before you can return to play. So why am I talking about this? Because on Friday, he practiced in a limited fashion. So he was only on step 4 of the 5-step concussion protocol. He never got to step 5, as far as I know. So I think we can have inferred on Friday that because he didn't practice in full, that he wasn't going to play on Sunday.
Yeah.
And nobody really talked about that until Sunday morning. So that was kind of on my radar. That happened with Stafford earlier in the year, and the same thing happened. But what I think is actionable for the fantasy players out there is if you have a player in concussion protocol and he does not get a full practice in on Friday, most teams don't practice on Saturday, and they don't have full contact practices after that. So if a player only has a limited practice on Friday and he's in the concussion protocol, I think you can move forward with the assumption that he's not going to play on Sunday, or not going to play that week. And that's what we saw here. And
so we need that FP. Joe Mixon, if this week we see that full practice, whether it's Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, as long as we see one of those, we can probably assume that he's played. So, but it's, and thinking, I guess, would you be concerned though if you saw that it was limited Wednesday and that he hadn't changed from Friday through Wednesday? Would that be a concern for you?
No, not necessarily. It's like we have until Friday. So as long as, like you said, as long as he gets a full practice in. But again, this suggests that teams and doctors are going to be extra conservative with post-concussion evaluations this year, as we've seen, because now they know essentially their asses are on the line and everybody's looking. So they want to be above reproach. And I think in the past, it might have been you had cases where it was like, he's close enough. All right, he's fine. Now, if you're not 100% cleared and people do not feel like they're above reproach, whether it's the team physician, the independent neurologist, the team, personnel, the coaches, whatever, they're going to err on the side of caution and they're going to hold the player out an extra week. And that's what we saw. So that's something to carry forward because I think that's actionable. And that's something that, until the climate in the NFL changes with regard to concussions, which maybe it's next year, they kind of, we forget about it. And, it goes back to the way that it was, kind of the Wild West. But for now,
we have concussions and we'll forget all about it.
Yeah, exactly. But for now, it's the climate of the NFL. And until things change, I think you can carry that forward as a fantasy player. So hopefully that's useful to everybody.
All right. So Doc, you want to kick off the rapid fire with a couple of Jaguars players.
Okay. So Trevor Lawrence had a leg injury, hit late in the first half, was able to return in the second half and finish the game. So, precaution MRI is pending. Let's just keep our fingers crossed that it doesn't show anything really bad. Otherwise, I think he's going to be okay going forward. So worryometer wise, on a scale of 1 to 5, I have it at a 2. And then who's the other Jaguar you want to talk about?
ETN, midfoot sprain, but he's fine.
Yeah, I honestly, I think he had.
It's just a jammed ankle.
Yeah, right. He had 16 touches. I really think this was more game script than anything else. If we see he's not practicing or he's going for more imaging, then that would be worrisome. But in the absence of that, I wouldn't really worry about it too much.
16 touches is pretty healthy. Like yeah, if he had gotten single digit touches, maybe okay. He's hurt, but not hurt enough to not play, but still limiting touches. But 16 touches, that seems pretty full complement. Like you said, they were down by so much that you had to kind of abandon the run game portion of it. And but yeah, sorry, I'll let you. It's rapid fire. I shouldn't be talking.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that's good. So speaking of increased touches, we have a DeAndre Swift sighting finally. So he got 18 touches. I know, hallelujah, Kyle, you were right. I definitely was not optimistic that this was going to happen, but for whatever reason, they took the governor off, and he had 18 touches in week 12 after having 10 in week 8, 5 in week 9, 7 in week 10, and 8 in week 11. So now 18 touches, week 13. So 18 touches this past week, 14 carries, 62 yards, and a touchdown, and then 6 targets, 4 receptions, and 49 yards. So that works. I think if you had him, you were playing him anyway because he was still PPR viable. He was getting catches. He was getting some touchdowns. So it's good to see the usage increase. The only caution that I will put out there is he's still at risk of re-injury and shutdown down the stretch. But if you've been riding with him for this long and you haven't gotten off the train, then I think you just got to ride the DeAndre Swift train until the wheels fall off, whether that be next week or week 18. So Treylon Burks, Tennessee, concussion. We know the deal. He's in the protocol. Smart Money says he misses week 14, and then it's week to week after that. Mike Williams, re-aggravation of his high ankle sprain for a couple of weeks ago. He's now missed weeks 12 and 13. So let's just see if he can practice this week. This absence could be longer if he did more damage or the joint is unstable. Worst case scenario could be looking at tightrope surgery like Cooper Kupp and Michael Thomas, either this year or after the season is over. So it still remains to be seen on that. Let's see if he can practice first and get anywhere close to playing. It looks like he hasn't been close the past 2 weeks. So let's see how close he actually gets. David Bell of Cleveland, hand injury, no details at this point. If it's a bruise or a sprain, probably won't cost him more than a week, if that. A break could cost him 3 to 6 weeks, depending on where it is. So just be on the lookout for updates with that. Chase Claypool, Gladys's old buddy, was able to return to the game after his knee injury. So it could be nothing. Just monitor, watch practice reports on that. Not really too scared about that, but just make sure nothing crops up Wednesday, Thursday, things like that. Quez Watkins, shoulder injury, AC joint sprain. So he's getting an MRI to assess the severity. This, like most AC joint injuries, is really being downplayed, but we've already seen with players like DeAndre Swift that these can really linger, even if it's just a grade 1. I would not be surprised if he was missed this week and possibly longer. If you hear that it's a grade 2 injury, be prepared for a longer absence. Cortland Sutton, speaking of longer absences, hamstring injury, MRI pending. They're already worried that he could miss multiple games, so that suggests a grade 2 partial tear of his hamstring.
He's done.
And that
he's done.
Could last.
Just put him out of their misery. Now we don't have to play him anymore.
So yeah, I think this. I think there's a chance this could be it for 2023.
He's done.
I think there's a decent chance that could be the case. So just be on the lookout for updates with that. On the worryometer on a scale of 1 to 5, I got him at a 3.5. So and it could.
He might not have the upside in that
and
offense.
He's
worth roster,
perilously
right?
getting close to a 4.
Like Doc, you're fine just cutting Sutton in a redraft league.
I'm fine cutting him at this point. Like what are we holding on to?
Close to cutting him in a dynasty league. My God,
I wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't, but like, God damn it, I'm close.
But yeah, I get the pull, but I definitely would cut him in a redraft league for sure. And then rounding out the injuries,
Aaron Jones. Sorry.
Aaron Jones, right? So let's see, what did he have? He had a shin injury, and I think that kind of opened the door for AJ Dillon to get some more play. So definitely like what I see there. Not really sure what's going on with that. Just basically, watch practice reports, look for updates on that. Don't really know the severity of it at this point. And then Hayden Hurst. So this one, he's already he had a calf injury, already doubtful for week 14. So a grade 1 injury could cost him 1 to 3 weeks. A grade 2 injury or a partial tear could knock him out for the rest of the regular season. So I think the fact that they've already kind of ruled him as doubtful is worrisome. If it goes beyond that and he's not able to practice after week 14, then I think we really need to be worried that he could have a more significant injury like a partial tear. And then we could be looking at a multi-week absence after that. So that's kind of the story with that. Did I miss anybody?
Nope, that's all we got.
Good job. See.
Bravo. Now we get to the, I guess it's the main event, although I think all of us think that was the main event, actually, hearing Doc talk about other injuries. But yes, Buccaneers Saints. I think I didn't update this. It's supposed to be 3.5, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 3.5 point favorites, 40.5 higher over under, or higher lower over under, however you say it, between the Saints and Buccaneers. And all these lines courtesy of Underdog. And if you sign up for Underdog today, use the promo code GF2, capital G, capital F, the digit 2, which is kind of like on the hat here. So underdog.com, join up. You can make some of the prop bets we'll talk about. You can make some of the game picks as well. For the rest of the NFL season. And again, sign up, the promo code GF2. And if you use our promo code, you will get a double deposit match of up to $100. So whatever you put in, Underdog will double your deposit, and you'll have access to double the money that you put in. But again, you have to use the promo code GF2. Hats available at goingfor2.com/store, by the way, for all the goingfor2.com appeal. The touchdown vulture shirt, which we'll get to in a sec, specifically with Doc's prop. Not that it was a touchdown prop, but so the first thing, 3 out of the 4 of us are taking the Saints and lower here. So Gladys, Doc, and I all agree on that. So Dan, you'll be the rebel, and you can kind of defend your take on going the exact opposite of the Buccaneers as 3.5 point favorites and higher.
Well, we mentioned this last week. When 2 bad teams tend to go at each other, one of 2 things happen: nothing or everything. And I'm banking on the loss of Lattimore opening up that pass. It opens up a lot. I know it shouldn't, but it does. It's just I kind of feel like this is that game where, I don't want to say it, but I think Tampa might go on a bit of march after this. I think they're going to go on a bit of a run. I think they think they're close, which is scary because they're like the Broncos. They're like 1 win better than Denver, which no one wants to talk about, but that's neither here or there. I kind of feel like at home, I'd feel a little bit different about this if it was in New Orleans. But I think Tampa at home, and they almost feel like outside of their O-line, which got hammered at the start of the year, I feel like they're close to getting back to where they might need to be in terms of a full accomplishment. Evans is right. Godwin is right. The running backs are firing. Julio and Gage are back. They seem to be there. It's just if they can put it all together. -3, obviously we put this together earlier today. -3, I thought, okay, can they win by 4? Can they get to 40 or 40? I look at it 41. Can it get to 21-20? Okay, it can. Can they get the 24? Can they get the 24-18, give or take, 22-18? Yeah, probably. Can they get to that point? I don't think the Saints look as bad as what people don't give them credit for. I think they have their moments, but I don't think they're that horrible. So I think they're a chance to at least keep up with the Bucs, and I don't know. I think 41 is the least of my concern. That 3 bothers me. 3.5 would have me thinking differently, but 3, I think they can get away with it. At home, I think they can get away with it.
All right. So do we want to talk props now, I guess? I'm wearing my Touchdown Vulture shirt for the Touchdown Vulture, Taysom Hill. And I think last time we didn't actually have props for him, but Doc, you took the swing on Taysom Hill.
I had to. For Dan. This one's for you, Dan. And I honestly, I think that the Buccaneers are going to win the game. I just think it's going to be close. So, given the opportunity to kind of win it two ways, that's why I ended up going with New Orleans. But I don't think that I really like New Orleans in the game. I think Tampa Bay is going to find a way to win. I just think it's going to be close. But the Taysom Hill prop, the one thing I don't know if you guys noticed, but the last time we went against the Saints on Monday night, they had a Andy Dalton interception prop bet, which just seemed like free money. And they didn't have it this time because I was going to go back to the well, but they didn't have Andy Dalton interception prop. So I saw Taysom Hill there, and I was like, this one's for Discord, Dan. I gotta take Taysom Hill and the over or the Hoya on the rushing yards of whatever it was, 23.5 or something. Just give me a long run, Taysom, and get me home.
All right. So who wants to go next?
You know there were tornadoes in New Orleans this week. No, my brother was there for work. He was in New Orleans for work. Turns out it wasn't a tornado. It was just Taysom Hill practicing 5-yard outright passes. He just,
Wow.
Shock put it like Cody Fajardo.
Trash bags flying everywhere.
That's right.
So you think the kicker will be more accurate than Taysom Hill? Well, certainly
there was some stupid stat at the start of the year where he had the same amount of pass attempts as like Tyler Boyd, Cooper Kupp, and someone else. It was like 1. So, he's a quarterback. Okay.
But yeah, Gladys, you're going with the kicker, Will Lutz. Higher than 1.5 field goals made.
Yes, I think this is going to be a field goal heavy game. Dennis Allen has had Tom Brady's number. The first time Tom Brady's beaten him was this year. I might have changed a little bit had I known Marshawn Lattimore's out, but Evans hasn't had a touchdown since week 7, so I'm not really that concerned about him. Him and Brady haven't won this.
Week 7.
What the fuck? Yeah.
Wow.
He's just not. I mean, Chris Godwin's the way to go if you're going for and Rashad White, I think. But I think Lutz going to be kicking a lot because it's primetime Andy Dalton, which is like primetime Kirk Cousins, and it's not pretty.
Which is why Doc wanted to go with the interception. But to your point, Gladys, you're taking the lower, so that kind of correlates.
I take the lower,
right?
The higher.
I thought you took the lower. Well, what are you taking then? Like, I guess you can still change
the higher.
Oh, you did take the higher?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, my mistake. But
I took the lower on the 40.5.
Higher on the 40.5. Okay, all right.
No, I took the lower on the 40.5.
Higher on Will Lutz, 1.5 field goals.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I
meant you took the lower on the game, meaning like less touchdowns, more field goals. So
right.
that like it correlates to if you're going to go with the kicker doing better, it's because you don't think touchdowns will be scored, and that makes sense going with the lower on the game total. I should have said the word game total.
Good save.
You got to use words, folks, if you want to communicate. But it's funny. You don't like Mike Evans for a touchdown, but the prop here is 5 receptions. And Dan, this will be 3 weeks in a row where you go with a reception prop line. You're hoping it goes better this time, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Najee Harris has 1 catch and he gets hurt on that catch. It's not really. It was in the first quarter. It was early in the first quarter. I was looking pretty good.
Should have gone the Jonathan Taylor rivals.
Listen,
good night, Corey.
Let me tell you something. I got stung at Jonathan Taylor when he had 86 yards. I had him at 86.5 in a parlay.
Yeah.
I had him on my show at Billy Pickham's Friday night at 7 o'clock every Friday.
On the Go about
that. Yeah, that's the one. And it's before the Armchair Fantasy DFS show. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I had him at 86.5, and I was watching with you. I'm like, yeah, great. Kyle's got this as well. Like we're both on him at over 86.5.
1 yard.
And like the last play, it's like -1, and he had the fumble at halftime. I'm like, fucker. Like,
or I guess for me it was 1.5 yards. I went with the 13.5 receiving yards. He hit 12.
Oh right, I had him at 86.5 rush yards. I'm like, oh, okay, great. He hit it like 86. I'm like,
which if I had taken the Taylor rivals over Najee, would have been enough to hit. So that's what makes me upset. Is I had it.
I got hammered. I was right about Matt Ryan. I'm going to say I was right about Jonathan Taylor, but Kyle, what's his name? Michael Pittman killed me. It's like, oh, it was so close, but no.
So
as soon as he was announced out, I just figured Mike Evans might have to actually play tonight.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
Normally he's like,
Yeah.
It's the worst. I said it on Friday. It's the worst game of the year for me because like they just don't give a shit about playing. They just want to beat the life out of each other. Like as soon as like they're jawing off at each other before a game, and then like 5 minutes in,
I went
they
back.
just don't care. They just don't care. It's like
I look back at like their game logs together, and
terrible.
I'm pretty sure
Terrible.
Marshawn Lattimore's rookie season, their first meeting, Evans was suspended the next game, or he was inactive the next game. I'm pretty sure it was a suspension. So this whole thing started right from day one with them. So it's been there. So it makes sense to kind of pivot to that now that we know what game that Lattimore is inactive.
It is the worst rivalry. It's going to be great on ESPN in like 20 years.
That'll be a 60 for 60 or 30 for 30.
It is the
20
worst
for whatever.
It would be frustrating as all hell to have either of these in an IDP or regular whatever. Like you'd be looking at Mike Evans going, okay, I need 15 points to win. And you're like, Marshall and Lattimore. You'd be like, shit. Like, it would be the end of everything that you'd hoped for. So, look, as soon as Lattimore was out, I was like, okay, he's going to be free. He's going to be a part of this. And at +5, it doesn't seem like the worst option going about. So, we'll take it. We'll go up +5
receptions. And then
six doesn't seem too bad, I think, especially with Fournette coming back in. I think he'll be a lot easier to get a little bit more work going about.
I guess the bad news for Dan is Evans has only hit over 5 receptions once this year. So
yeah, I know.
But,
yeah,
but
it's
we'll
okay.
See. Like you said, you think Tampa's kind of turned a corner. And anyway, so I'm not going to repeat my mistakes from last week. I'm going with the rivals this week. Both times I've debated doing it. I've chickened out, and it cost me because I would have had it with the rivals pick, and I blew it on the regular prop. So I'm going with the rivals this week. Which Chris rival do I want though? We've got Chris Godwin. -30.5 receiving yards against Jarvis Landry. That's one that really stood out to me right away. There's also Chris Olave and Mike Evans even for yards. But now that Lattimore's out, I don't want to go with that one. And then the other one was Chris Olave versus Chris Godwin. So I was going to either take Chris Godwin or Chris Olave. And in this last one, I didn't know which one to take. It's Olave at +6.5 receiving yards, which I actually is tempting against Godwin now that Lattimore's out, but I think I'm ultimately going to go with
you got like 30 seconds for the game.
Godwin versus Landry, 30.5 receiving yards. Just because Landry's done awful this year. His lower for underdog is 39.5. And he's hit that once this year. So if that's the line they expect for Landry and they expect Godwin 30 more, it's tough for Landry to even get to that. So that's my thinking there of going Godwin -30.5 receiving yards versus.
Whose face is he trying to read? Whose face is he trying to read? Make a pick, Kyle. Make a pick. Make a pick.
I just did. It's gone.
I heard it.
It's been in this. Also, if you guys look at the spreadsheet I share. It's been in the spreadsheet for like the last 10 minutes.
All it said was rivals. I was like, he's going to do it again.
Yeah. So what did you end up going with, Kyle?
Godwin
versus Olave.
No, versus Landry.
Godwin versus Landry, and they're even or what?
No, it's -30.5 receiving yards. So Godwin has to score more than 31 more yards than Landry.
That's not bad. Landry's been half.
And that's me just betting against Landry more than anything because he's hasn't been.
Why don't you tell him what the standings are, Kyle? Since you were talking about it.
Well, it's funny because now that it's the bets are locked in, it's too late to take back anything we've said. We had our worst week collectively last week.
We were terrible.
As a group, went 3 for 12. Which, to be fair, I'm the most responsible for because I went 0 for 3. At least all of you got one thing right, so I'm the most responsible. I will take blame for that. But yeah.
Wait, what? We went collectively what?
3 for 12.
Well, if I'm not mistaken,
Gladys and Doc both got the Steelers at 2.5-point underdogs, and then Dan was the only one who went higher. So those were the 3 correct picks last week.
Wait, hold on. No. What about Pickens?
Nope, he had 3 catches. He went over on receiving yards, but he didn't get over on catches.
Yeah, we got to look at that because I thought it was receiving yards, not catches. I don't believe I went receptions. I think I went receiving yards.
And I remember saying that on the show. I thought the receiving yards were the better play. So if you did do that, you would have got that. So, but still, 4 out of 12 is still probably pretty bad for us. So let's hope we do better this time. But yeah, so the standings, Doc's still leading 24, 12, and 3. Dan's 21, 14, and 4. So, still has some time, a few weeks left to catch up to beat Doc. But so far, Doc kind of staying at the top.
Wait, did you ding me for Pickens? It
might be 25, 11, and 3 if you did take receiving yards. We'll have to look back in the chat.
He's a hustler. I'll give him that.
Wait. Did anyone think I was wrong? Did he take receptions?
Well, I mean, it's the beauty of the internet is that it's out there. It's like that's the way I remember it. I guess I could be wrong, but
I'm pretty sure we said receptions on air because you weren't here, but you may have written it differently and we read it wrong. So if we went back to the video, it wouldn't necessarily confirm anything.
All right. Well, it'll be in the chat, but we'll
go back in the chat. We'll figure it out. Either way, Doc's still at the top, whether it's by 3 or by 4 points. Probably gonna kick all our butts this year. I'm at 18-3, so I'm right at 500. So even though I went 0-3 last week, I dropped to 500. Gladys, you're 2 behind me at 16-20-3. So I could definitely blow it and you could pass me and I'll finish last. So let's go, Gladys, catch up.
Yeah.
Because this is the week where I take the rivals and it doesn't come true, knowing my luck.
It's a good rivals pick, to be fair. I looked at Landry before. I was like, he's been doing nothing.
I almost thought like Landry just under on his 39.5 also was an interesting pick. That
it's worth a shout. He's been going nowhere. He's been good for him. He's out on the pitch again, but
anyway, so the game has started. So we can head out of here. Unless you can all keep ripping on me if you want. That's always fun.
I'm right now. I'm screenshotting the proof that I took Pickens receiving yards. So I don't know. This whole thing is shaping up to have like the trustworthiness of a Colorado House of Representatives election. So this is we got scandal brewing here at going for 2.
Ooh, yeah, find out the thrilling conclusion. Not conclusion actually. Find out the thrilling next time. I don't know. I blew that. Let's go with the regular outro. So you can follow us along on Twitter at going4_2 for everything Going for 2 related. Also Going for 2 Live to get all the great live shows. There's shows literally every day of the week on the network. Dan already mentioned his Friday is one of the doubleheader days. He's got his B League Pick'ems, followed by the Jeff's DFS Armchair Show. Tomorrow will be another doubleheader day. You got Speak On It, and you've got the Fantasy Cheat Sheet on Tuesdays. Saturday night's another doubleheader. Saturday night, Dynasty Saturday night, followed by the Cover Zero IDP show. And then you've got at least one live show every other day of the week. So tune in next week. We'll all be here. And of course, you can follow us all on Twitter. The doc is at TFS Doc, which stands for The Fantasy Sports Doc, author of our favorite book, Injuries Suck, but Your Fantasy Team Doesn't Have to.
Oh, yeah.
Here, I'll cover that. Hang on. I got you, Gladys.
You covered
there. It? Yeah. Well, yeah. The logo was covering it, but now you can see it.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Dan, I can't tell if you're raising your hand or just pointing at the books. I think you were pointing at the books, right?
Both.
Okay. But you're also at the B League Says on Twitter.
Yes.
Discord Dan, Promo Pimp, Jetlag John, Thomas the Tank Engine. Did I miss anything?
No.
Discord Dan? I don't know. It's Dan. Sorry, Australia lost. At least it wasn't 4-0. At least it wasn't Korea giving up 4 goals in the first 30 minutes.
Hey, listen.
No, that game sucked.
We nearly pulled one back. We nearly had
That's
Argentina.
True. It was close. Yeah,
yeah. We nearly had Argentina. We did. Listen, we're going to lose a World Cup. That's fine. We lost to France and Argentina. It's okay.
No shame in that.
None. You're going to lose to Messi and Mbappe? It's all right. We're good. We did all right.
Portugal plays tomorrow. Let's go Portugal. But yeah, because got Canada. I got nothing else to cheer for. So
I want an upset. We need an upset though. Like
we do.
Morocco. Who's playing us tomorrow? Portugal, Morocco.
Spain is the other one. Yeah, Morocco, Portugal, Spain and
Switzerland.
Or no, Morocco, Switzerland, Portugal. Switzerland.
Come on, give us some Morocco.
Morocco, Spain, Portugal.
Give us something. We need some upsets. Like Australia was close. USA were very close.
Japan was close.
Right. Japan was close. How do you send why are you sending your centre backs out there to take penalties? Why? You've got strikers. They're paid to score goals. Why are they taking penalties? This is the dumbest thing ever. Why?
Well, and
if you're paid to take, listen, it's the easiest. It's the easiest shot. It's the easiest shot on goal you have all game. It's a dead ball, and the keeper has to guess. There's no defenders. It's still. I'm sorry. I'm a soccer guy. I should preface this over everything else in the world. I'm a soccer guy.
Dan used to play
So, like,
soccer.
all of that, like
he
the
loves soccer.
idea that like a dead ball should be given to a centre back in the most important part of your game at a World Cup is the most frustrating fucking thing, part of my language, I've ever seen. You have strikers paid £50,000 a week that aren't stepping up to the plate to take a shot. Are you fucking mad? Like, this is the World Cup. Like, send the guy out there paid to score goals to score one for you if 11 yards out in front of a keeper that can't come off his line. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
So Dan, not having forwards go first, you sound like you're on the fence about it.
No, listen, I'm a former penalty taker. I used to be a striker, but as I got older, I worked my way back down. But look, these guys have been playing their positions for their whole life. This is how it is. Maya Yoshida is a centre-back for Japan, played at Southampton. He's a centre-back there, worked his way through England. I think he's in Germany now. It doesn't matter. He's a fucking centre-back. There's no way in hell that guy should be taking a penalty in your most important game of the year in sudden death penalties because you already missed 2. You're not sending a centre-back out there. Send your striker, your winger, attacking midfielder. Anyone else that's paid to score goals, not the guy that's designed to stop them. It's the dumbest thing ever.
For everybody that had 821 as to when the stream went completely off the rails, you win the
I had money.
I thought we started off the rails, to be fair.
We did. But,
Sorry, but it's just one of those things. Like, if you see a penalty shootout at the World Cup again and they start sending centre-backs out there, I get it. England could go to one. Trent Alexander-Arnold is a free kick specialist, set piece taker. I understand. Not a goal scorer that has 6 or 7 shots on goal a game. It's wild to think that guys like that who have random shots on goal every other week are the guys that you're sending out there to take them at the most important time of the year. Dumb. And scene.
I'm a big fan of catharsis, so I think we all feel better. Dan, I hope you feel better after that.
Well, his rant was so long, it gave me time to go back in the chat and actually confirm that Doc did say rec yards. He put rec in capital and yards in minuscule. I think that's maybe what tricked me. So I will take the blame again, just like I'll take the blame for going 0-3 last week. So my apologies. Doc's updated rankings in the standings are 25, 11, and 3. So he's 4 ahead of Dan. So Dan, you really got to catch up if you don't want Doc to run away with it.
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Yeah, bye at Gladys L. Tyler on Twitter. I won't hold you any longer. I'm at Center Says, and this was the 2-point conversion Monday night pregame show. Gladys, do you want to say anything to end, or is it bye, guys? Get out of here. Stop talking.
Bye, guys. Stop talking.
Right. We'll see you all next week to talk some more here on the Going for 2 Live Network.